taken out of context.
Taken out of context.
Taking things out of context.
Out of context.
Taken out of context.
Taken out of context.
In the context.
We have more context.
Out of context.
Taken out of context.
That is so out of context.
And take shit out of context.
Out of context.
Deeply out of context.
You're taking it out of context.
No, hey, hold on. So we're going to flesh this out because I don't want nobody saying we don't take things in context.
It's hard for your words to be taken out of context.
The full context.
In a modern day context.
Tell me the context.
Another important reminder as to why context is so important. So,
hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Straight out of
Context. I am Barbara Ann. Fair use disclaimer. I used to really like Candace Owens. That is, until my eyes opened. And in the last 4 weeks, she has done 18 videos about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's not that she's doing the videos. It's not that she's investigating. It is the multitude of lies that are in these 18 videos. Recently, she does show a text message to back up one of her many claims, which was confirmed to be true. However, Charlie Kirk himself, days after that text message, said something completely different. And mind you, this text message was private. 9 staff members, very close friends and associates of his, Turning Point USA, were in this group chat with him. Of course, he starts it off with saying that he just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year. Because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Now, this is suspicious because there is no date or timestamp and there is redactions. That is to allegedly redact the information of the other 9 members that are in that group chat. Somebody responds, he goes on to say, Jewish donors play into all the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. Of course, another user responds, please do not invite Candace. That might feel good short term, but it's not good long term, in my opinion. Like all groups, you're going to get wide variety of opinions. That nasty free will thing that God bestowed on us makes life frustrating at times. After the dust settles a bit, maybe. And these text messages were confirmed to be true by Turning Point USA. However, what is not said in here is that Charlie had private email and text message correspondence with that Jewish donor, to which he was called an anti-Semite, among other things, having Turning Point USA, which he founded at 19 years old, called into question and threatened. His frustration and his venting privately with his staff members and his associates and friends at Turning Point USA means nothing, because the very next day he went on Megyn Kelly and he made what he thinks and feels very known, and it doesn't align with Candace Owens' conspiracy theories that she is trying to push. In fact, to me, investigating is one thing, but starting to tamper with witnesses, contacting witnesses like Lance Twiggs, Tyler Robinson's family, Lance Twiggs' family, people that are going to be likely subpoenaed to testify at the trial of Tyler James Robinson. What kind of truth and justice stands in the way of truth and justice just because somebody wants a conspiracy theory to be true? And Candace Owens is projected to make over $5 million, allegedly, off of her last 18 videos. So much so that she has been on vacation this past Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, airing no show at all. And that's from immense live gifts, ad revenue on the replay, merchandise sales, new subscribers, new memberships and subscriptions to her website, and more website hits, including her book sales. She may have once been a dear friend and associate of Charlie Kirk, but it's no secret that he distanced himself from her greatly. I mean, when you're really pissed off at a private email and text exchange with a Jewish donor who called you an anti-Semite and pulled away $2 million from your nonprofit, and you go and talk to your staff saying, I'm going to leave the pro-Israel cause, and your first thought is to threaten to bring back Candace Owens, that tells you right there that they were not very close, that that's what he really thinks and feels about Candace Owens, that he would only bring her back to piss off those Jewish donors who pulled their funding from Turning Point USA. And we know that he was called an anti-Semite by this Jewish donor because he says so himself the very next day on Megyn Kelly, where he still very actively is not only pro-Israel, but is adamant that he wants Israel to win. Still, nothing more than him venting his frustration and trying to paint a different narrative is untruth and is not doing justice to Charlie Kirk, what he felt, what he thought, what he said the very next day himself on his own show, on Megyn Kelly's show, those private exchanges that he had with said donor. That doesn't mean that that's the way he felt, because the very next day he still defended Israel. But one thing Candace Owens cannot stop doing is bad-mouthing his pastor and telling him to essentially sit down and shut up, which is beyond me as disgusting, because he had this to say. Charlie Kirk was my friend and I was his pastor. I want to simply say this regarding Candace Owens. Charlie Kirk was a friend to Candace and never publicly spoke poorly of her, though he disagreed with her. The text messages prove that when he threatens to bring her back out of anger and frustration, just to stick it to that Jewish donor. He never operated or entertained any gossip or innuendo concerning Candace. My only comment that I offer regarding Candace is this. I only wish at this tragic time of mourning that she would be the friend to Charlie that he was to her. He would have never treated Candace or her family or her priest, her Catholic priest, in such a way had, God forbid, this tragedy been hers. A friend loves at all times. I don't know. Over $5 million allegedly. Someone on X has been keeping track of the math on all of that. On 18 videos regarding his assassination. That's a pretty big motive to continue the videos from 4 to 10 to 15 to now 18. She can't look at things objectively because she knew Charlie Kirk. She worked with him, for him, but also with over 7.5 million followers and almost 5.5 million between X and YouTube. Why would you want to potentially impede justice, tamper with witnesses, obstruct justice of an active investigation and case? She may say that it's because she doesn't trust the FBI, but the FBI didn't bring these charges. Utah law enforcement did. They only worked alongside the Utah law enforcement because of Charlie Kirk's status. And that makes no sense that his parents, his wife would thank the FBI and Utah law enforcement. It's not that Turning Point USA wants her to shut up and wants everything to go away, but her contacting witnesses that are in the indictment, her trying to obtain footage that is going to be admitted to a jury to see, trying to get homeowners to release that footage to her, if not the world, trying to get everybody that was there to hand over their footage of the assassination. The world already has access to and has seen it already. We don't need all 3,500 different angles. But this is the problem that I have with Candace Owens doing the investigation that she claims she is doing. It's not really an investigation at all. She's relying on the public to give her tips so she can further make more videos, further driving more conspiracy theories and playing on other people's fear and paranoia, distrust of law enforcement officers. The same woman who once backed the law enforcement officer who took the life of George Floyd and helped run a GoFundMe to get him a private attorney to hopefully get him off of charges. The same woman who once broke wide open that Black Lives Matter is a scam organization that got over $90 million in donations in a single year, and none of that money went to real Black lives. She wants to play on your fear and paranoia, although she's the one that's hiring off-duty cops for extra security. For her extremely wealthy, multi-million-dollar husband, and their 4 kids. She's also the woman that has called law enforcement multiple times to report death threats, security threats, or security issues to her job, her travel. Well, that's kind of ironic for somebody who doesn't trust the feds or law enforcement to do their job, right? The same woman who pushed everybody to go and vote for Trump not only the first time, but the second time, and now has backtracked and said, oh no, this administration is not what it once was. She still defends that he is a better candidate than Kamala Harris, But she doesn't like his administration because she doesn't like the fact that he backs Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel, like nearly every president has. Speaking of, Charlie Kirk would have been 32 years old 2 days ago on October 14th. Donald Trump posthumously awarded Charlie Kirk via his wife, his 2 babies, his sister, and his parents the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The Presidential Medal of Freedom is a superior civilian decoration, which can and is given by the president via his own discretion. And it is given to individuals for their merit, their character, to the contribution of the United States of America, to national security, to the interest of the United States of America, for promoting and advocating for world peace, cultural or other significant contributions, for not only patriotism, but for significant private or public contributions to the United States of America. Even though Turning Point USA has confirmed the text message as being true, Candace Owens is not in the clear because she has been caught in dozens of other lies without showing any receipts. And it still proves her a liar because the very next day, Charlie still was defending Israel. He, in fact, did not abandon the pro-Israel cause. In fact, he tells you exactly why he made that text message the day before in this video clip of the Charlie Kirk show and him talking to Megyn Kelly on her show, where he makes it abundantly obvious and clear that he not only is still pro-Israel, that he wants Israel to win, but that he had a prior private exchange with a Jewish donor who we now know withdrew over $2 million a year from Turning Point USA, venting his frustrations by being called an anti-Semite by that Jewish donor and having his moral character be called into question. Erica Kirk would know that this is the truth and would know that Candace Owens is just playing on her audience for her own financial gain and for her own content. And even though they will never do it, Erica Kirk knows it because she knows who Charlie talked to privately. She knows what he was called by that person, why he was frustrated, and why he then went on to say the same day in a group message with his staff members, venting those frustrations that he would leave the pro-Israel cause. However, people talk about things all day, every day. I talk about things all day, every day. We all say or talk about things that we might do out of anger or hurt or frustration. The fact is, did you do them? Did I do them? Did Charlie Kirk do them? Absolutely not. Because the very next day, he made it clear. And here is that clip. Take a listen.
You and I are both supporters of Israel and have defended Israel since the beginning of this conflict and spoken out about the anti-Semitism that has erupted on these college campuses many, 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 many times. And something's happening, though, with this whole debate that is really bothering me. And I wonder if you're feeling it too.
Again, I'm not a theologian, but I'm a Christian. My life was changed in Israel. The spiritual energy is so amazing there. I want them to win. I've said that repeatedly.
Same.
And however, Megyn, you're hitting on something very potent and important. Now, let me first say, I don't want to judge an entire group because there's been many people in the pro-Israel world that have been very sweet, very kind, very nuanced, very Charlie, you know, you're with us, you don't have to agree all the time. However, and I will say this, the behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megyn, calling me an anti-Semite. I am learning biblical Hebrew and writing a book on the Shabbat. I honor the Shabbat, literally the Jewish Sabbath. I visit Israel and fight for it. And there's another article out in the Times of Israel today. I could read it on air. I was just reading before I got on. Charlie, what are you doing? Like, why are you, what am I doing? I'm sorry. Like, let's just take a step back here. Like, I'm an American citizen. Yes, I want Israel to win. Yes, I'm a Christian. But like some of the mess, and you saw, and you've seen how I've been treated, Megyn, by some, not all, by some.
No, it's very irritating.
It's
been
almost
so
as if
unfair. They were coming after you after Turning Point for, among other things, that you had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith is allowed to criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was overrepresented.
Though. No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time. I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megyn. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this.
And that was put on YouTube on August 6th of 2025. This was, from what we are told, the day after those text messages in that group chat took place. So that's exactly how I pieced it together in a timeline, how it went down. Said donor wanted Charlie Kirk to speak and have certain guests on, wanted to control the content and the narrative and message a little too much, to which Charlie Kirk was adamant. No, they decided to pull back their $2 million donation to Turning Point USA. But things got heated, and Charlie's moral character was called into question, and he was insinuated to be an anti-Semite. I believe that same donor had made an insinuation or just blatantly told Charlie that they could destroy Turning Point USA, and he did not take kindly to that. If I had an organization for nearly 13 years that I worked very hard on, I wouldn't take kindly to that threat either. He gets frustrated and he lets 9 people in a group chat know those frustrations based on that private conversation with the donor, to which he retaliates out of that anger and frustration and says that he's just going to bring Candace back, that he's just going to leave the pro-Israel cause. However, the very next day on his own show and talking to Megyn Kelly, he does not do that. He not only doubles down on his pro-Israel stance and his love for Israel and wanting Israel to win, but he also simultaneously doubles down on his frustrations on being labeled an anti-Semite by pressure from certain Jewish or Jewish American donors. And yet at the end of all of it, all of that may have absolutely nothing to do with his assassination or Tyler James Robinson. And I truly believe that Candace Owens is only trying to bide time, hoping that somebody will give her a tip that is good enough for her to actually tie all of these crazy conspiracy theories together with real receipts instead of her imaginary delusions. And yet she still has been unable to do that. In fact, I think she's running out of content that she took an entire week off for vacation, because that's not only how extremely wealthy and elite her and her husband are in the less than 1%, but nothing screams, I need to solve my best friend's murder, than, hey, I'm going to start this investigation, but I'm just going to conveniently on week 5, when things are starting to dry up, go on vacation. People that did like and follow Candace for the last few years have read her books, have read Xavier Poussard's investigation into Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte Macron, which is not her investigation. She only presented Xavier Poussard's investigation in English, using her mainstream media audience. I feel that we have the right to have our valid criticisms and critiques. We have every valid right to be able to say, this is not okay. You need to stop. You need to back off a little bit from some of the insinuations that you're implying here. If you're going to say something, you need to show receipts when it comes to the assassination of a man's life. Like it or not, disrespecting his wife, disrespecting his 1- and 3-year-old babies, disrespecting his parents, his sister, and last but not least, his pastor. That should never be the result of seeking truth, justice, and investigating. So I feel not only myself, but us collectively have every right to not only demand better of Candace Owens, but to ask those questions. Because making an alleged $5 million off of 18 videos is a pretty damn big motive. Charlie Kirk was so frustrated just from losing not even a half of that in donations every year. So to put that in perspective for you, Candace Owens has a very big motive to continue this so-called investigation. But first, good or bad, I'm going to let you see a few clips of what other people are thinking regarding Candace Owens. Take a listen.
Really getting ready to piss a bunch of people off, and I truly do not care. I'll put it this way. I had to unblock Candace Owens to be able to see the videos that you guys keep tagging me in. I had to unblock her. And the reason for that is, I don't know if anybody else noticed, but several months ago, she took a hard left fucking turn. And that's not to say that she wasn't left before. She was a liberal all the way through college. Now, she transitioned to the right years back after college, and I agreed with a lot of her viewpoints. And there was a time in my life where I was like, this woman could be a good potential future presidential candidate. But my viewpoints on that have completely shifted as of, several months ago. And to me, I unblocked her to watch the videos that you guys are talking about, and I 100% do not support the narrative that she is pushing whatsoever. Her whole narrative, everything's always been a conspiracy to her, and I love a good conspiracy, but the narrative that she's pushing, that Israel is responsible for Charlie's assassination, I don't believe at all. I'm not saying Israel is holier than thou, and I do not agree with every single thing that Israel has done or said by any stretch of the means whatsoever. But if Israel was going to assassinate an influencer of all people on U.S. soil, I would think that it would probably be somebody like Candace Owens, who openly preaches hate against Israel. While Charlie might not have completely agreed with Israel and might have questioned Israel on certain topics, he wasn't out spewing hate towards Israel. So I really think that if Israel was going to assassinate an influencer in the U.S., it would probably be somebody like Candace rather than Charlie. I mean, that whole thing just does not make sense to me whatsoever. Also not buying the whole narrative that her and Charlie were like super tight best friends. I'm not saying they weren't colleagues, they weren't friends, and they didn't communicate with one another, but they were definitely not as close over the last several months as they have been in years past, by any means, at least not to my knowledge. So I believe truly, wholeheartedly, that she is using this as an opportunity to turn the spotlight on herself to push her narrative. And she is a smart woman, and she is a good journalist. But that being said, she is smart enough to be able to gather bits and pieces of information and be able to collectively put them together to point people in the direction that she wants them to look and make it believable. That's just my opinion on it. Y'all are free to follow her, like her, whatever you want to do. I do not agree with her whatsoever. The whole situation that she's putting out seems completely off to me.
I think the only person more self-serving than Candace Owens at this point is Jeffree motherfucking Star, bitch. When it was cool to be a supporter of the dolls, and when that was politically in, he was all about it, sitting in the back of a car with Nikita Dragun, who he claimed to be a close friend, telling her how inspiring it was that she had the courage to transition her gender, and how transitioning her gender was so impactful and powerful to people watching. But now when it's not so cool politically, he's on a tirade against the dolls. We all know what he's doing here. It's very clear. It's business related. He sees an opportunity to tap into a market that maybe historically didn't have him on their radar at all, didn't give a fuck about him. Now he thinks he's going to win them over with more gender affirming surgeries than I've ever had and probably will ever have in my life. Loser behavior.
We are going to solve the murder of my friend, Charlie Kirk. And if you guys would like to support us, we are independent.
That young man on the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That young man, I forgive him. I forgive him because it was what Christ did and is what Charlie would do. The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the gospel is love, and always love. Love for our enemies and love for those who persecute us. The world needs Turning Point USA. It needs a group that will point young people away from the path of misery and sin. It needs something that will lead people away from hell in this world and in the next. It needs young people pointed in the direction of truth and beauty. And so I promise you today, every part of our work will become greater. I am tremendously honored to be the new CEO of Turning Point USA.
Especially with the way that I am being attacked for simply trying to investigate this. And the attacks are growing frantic. It's almost as if they all received an email from somebody who said, I don't care what you say, make it up out of thin air, and do not stop attacking Candace Owens. That is the loudest. It's like an alarm went off. And everyone, people that I thought I was friends with, are coming after me with obscene lies that are just so easily fact-checked. So easily, you can debunk them in 4 seconds on the internet, and they're delivering it as though it's honest. We're going to talk about that. I was even surprised PBD. I mean, I've always been friendly with him. I've always been kind to him. I have nothing wrong to him. And he seems to be kind of, he's the one who platformed without any pushback, Eric Bowling. And I have an idea about why all of that may be. I'll tell you in just a second. First, I want to remind you guys about GNO land, because what if smart contract platforms were not controlled by the elites or big tech? What if they were built by and for real builders, you know, the people?
I think Candace has officially lost me by conspiring against bees and the beehive state and the analogy of being a worker bee and bee farming. Like, she's just lost me. Like, when I heard her say that, I already knew she was kind of crazy. I already knew she said a lot of wacky things, but I felt like some of it had some merit to it, so I kept watching her. But honestly, today, the moment she said bees, like bzz, bees, and I realized it's giving reaching. Today's episode was nothing crazy, and it's giving she doesn't have anything, so she's literally pulling things out of thin air, including bees. It's honestly hilarious, and this is where she's lost me.
Bro, what the fuck is going on with Candace Owens?
You don't get to ask those questions. What's wrong with you, Mom? Why are you so scared?
I don't even know the context of that clip. I just know that getting on camera and saying that shit is crazy.
This is not about Gaza. This is about Greta. First, Gaza has no docking infrastructure for foreign boats. Even if the flotilla itself would reach the coast, there's literally nowhere to unload supplies. So everyone knows this, including the organizers of this flotilla. So what's the goal? Why send out the flotilla? Cameras, headlines, some social media clicks. That's really what this is all about. Secondly, Israel's naval blockade exists to prevent weapons smuggling. Hamas has a long record of using different aid channels in order to bring in rockets and military equipment. So pretending that this blockade is only there to starve civilians is very, very dishonest. If you want to deliver aid, you can work with the already established humanitarian channels, not little boat stunts. Thirdly, the organizers themselves admit that this is about sending hope to Gaza. Right? That's code for symbolism over substance. That's what's going on over here. Meanwhile, real humanitarian groups, they quietly get food, medicine, other supplies in. They do the hard work without press, without headlines, without celebrity entourages. Fourthly, Greta's whole brand thrives on visibility, whether it's school strikes, whether it's yachts across the Atlantic, or flotillas to Gaza. Her brand depends on being in front of the camera. Again, this isn't about Gaza. This is about Greta. So let's call this exactly what it is, a feel-good PR spectacle. There's not going to be anything delivered to Gaza. It's not going to solve the conflict. It's not going to help the people in Gaza, but it will deliver some headlines. And that, unfortunately, seems to be the only cargo that's on this flotilla. If you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.
As I'm sitting here filming this, the Global Samud flotilla is live streaming its illegal interception by the Israeli government. For Israel's interception of this flotilla to be legal under international law, its blockade has to be legal. And for that, it must not stop the delivery of humanitarian aid to civilians. That means Israel's blockade of Gaza is clearly illegal.
So I'm going to hold your hand with a napkin in between when I say this. You have a clear misunderstanding on the requirement to allow humanitarian aid during a naval blockade, so shut the fuck up and let me explain. So for one, let's start by understanding that in every single paragraph of the San Remo Conference that requires the blockading party to allow the passage of humanitarian aid, it clarifies that all passage is subject towards the exclusive right to prescribe technical arrangements, including search by the blockading party. And with that exclusive right, Israel has already offered to unload and transfer the aid to Gaza via official channels like the ports inside Ashdod and Ashkelon. But here's the thing, the flotilla rejected this offer because they want to politicize the aid and they could not give a rat's ass about the people inside of Gaza. Now, if you don't want to make dumbass statements like her, please use primary sources. In this case, it would be the San Remo conference. Do not get yourself into predicaments where a random-ass article online, which is what she used, tells you something that is not accurate. Let me also clarify by stating that Israel's naval blockade is 100% in accordance with international law. And Israel's naval blockade was implemented as a legitimate military precaution over the importation of weaponry to Gaza straight to the hands of Hamas. And by the way, this was even reaffirmed by the UN, the same organization you use to predicate your appeal to authority fallacies upon for your other incendiary claims, such as genocide. And it was their panel of inquiry report which concluded that Israel's naval blockade was justified under international law given the threat of armed groups inside of Gaza. Now on to one of your easier claims to debunk, which is the claim of Israel having a starvation policy towards the Palestinians, which completely contradicts the 1.6 million tons of food aid which has been facilitated into Gaza during this current Gaza conflict, and this 160 million meals that have been provided directly towards Gazans through the GHF, which again completely contradicts the claim of a starvation policy. Now, you would have to explain to me how if you allow millions of meals, millions of metric tons of aid, you are trying to destroy them by starving them. It doesn't make any sense. Nobody has been to explain to me yet. I would love for somebody to be able to. You can be the first person.
For 1 year, I have watched Israel burn children alive. You don't care about veterans. You don't care about American values. You are destroying this country. Shame on all of you. May God give you the moral courage. May God give you the moral courage to do the right thing. May God give you your heart. Please, shame on you.
Live last night, or actually this morning at 7 a.m., but I thought that would be like weird and obsessive, but it just, the stars are just lining up. We discovered something last night. I did very, very late into the night. That is so explosive, and it's just perfect because this is going to be our last episode on the Justin Baldoni case. And my instincts, I feel, were just spot on the entire time. I just basically am going to put it all together for you. Thank you to everyone who's been sending me little tidbits. It was somebody who sent me a little tidbit about some missing pictures of Taylor Swift. They were like convinced that these pictures existed and that her marketing team had them wiped from the internet, and that she like vaguely recalled some photos of her. And the fact that our season finale like accidentally includes Joe Alwyn is making me giddy, because I don't know, I was very bothered by his treatment post breakup. Like, I don't know if anybody else was. I just didn't like it for some reason, because it seemed like it was like a real serious, like authentic, long relationship. And I didn't like the girl boss vibes. But I will say this story is going to be remembered as girl boss flew too close to the sun. And it's just crazy. Like, I don't even know how this stuff lands in my lap, how I find this stuff out. Probably because I just don't let go of things, and I turn into a psycho when I create timelines. So that's probably what's happening. But you will not be disappointed in today's episode. We weren't going to do an episode today, but now we are doing an episode. We're going to do a shortened episode so I can just dump this on you and then turn my full attention to Emmanuel Macron. But it's going to send the internet like crazy. You guys are going to go crazy. So I will see you at 4 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. I'll make sure I put the link in my stories.
This woman just keeps dropping bombs, and she just dropped another one. Look, you can call her cuckoo, you can call her whatever, but her biggest claim was just confirmed authentic by Turning Point, that those text messages were real about Charlie talking about Israel and his donors. So whenever she talks about the situation or makes a claim, I think it's fair for everyone to listen whether you believe her or not. Now, she just said 24 hours before he was killed, Charlie expressed to 3 different people that he thought they were going to kill him. Take a look at this.
I want to say one more thing rather explosively. 3 people told me off record. 2 people who have this in a written communication from Charlie. One who is a Turning Point USA donor, and I would say very much one of the white knights in this. The very day before Charlie Kirk died, he expressed that he thought he was going to be killed. He told these people, I think they're going to kill me.
Tyler Bauer, the spokesperson for Turning Point USA, has confirmed that the text messages that Candace Owens released were in fact real. And before you jump to conclusions, I hope you know, first of all, Tyler and I are mutuals. I have a lot of respect for him. And this isn't proving exactly what you think it's proving. So a lot of people are sharing, A 30-second clip from this Charlie Kirk episode. By the way, if you really want to know the truth, if you really want to know the full context, I would encourage you to watch the entire episode, not just a 20 or 30-second clip that people are sharing. And this is what I gathered from it. What I gathered from it was, yeah, these text messages are real. We're glad they're out there. But the reason we're glad they're out there is because we've been accused of so many things. We've been accused of covering for this, or not paying attention to that, or not paying attention to this. And what he was trying to say is like, look, yeah, these messages are real. We shared these messages with government officials. And also, we don't know how this person got a hold of them, but they did. And they're out there. And ultimately, we're glad because we get the opportunity to defend ourselves to you and to say to you, the public, we looked at every different angle possible. All we wanted to do was to find the person responsible for our friend's murder, and these text messages were shared in the 33 hours that Tyler Robinson was apprehended. So these were shared before that. And they also went on to say there is a big federal investigation going on. There's certain things that we can't say, that we wish we could say, but we can't because of this federal investigation. And if you are at all familiar with law enforcement, with how cases go, a case can get dismissed off of technicalities. So they do. They have to be very careful with what they can say publicly. So there's that. They said these were real. They said they're glad they came out. But again, this does not validify some of the wildest claims that Candace Owens made. In fact, they were saying, we're glad these got out. We're glad they're here because we get to say how we feel. They also went on to say that even though Charlie Kirk disagreed with Candace on a lot of different things, he would never say anything bad about her. Ever. Same with Tucker. Never, ever, ever. So yeah, I appreciate that these messages came out. Maybe we'll do more videos on the things moving forward. I kind of don't want to. It just feels like so silly. But here's exactly what it is. And also, one of the reasons that Candace is getting away with a lot of this stuff that she's getting away with is because they don't want to jeopardize Charlie's investigation in any way, shape, or form, which is what they were admitting in this show. But again, people are only releasing a 20-second clip where they're like, yeah, it's true, and we're glad she released it. But you don't hear their entire explanation as to why they're glad, which is what I just gave you. And again, I would encourage you, before you argue with me, before you disagree with me, I would encourage you to watch the entire episode. Go, it's available, it's online, you don't have to listen to me, watch the entire episode.
But I want to take the start of this show to address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain that has been made known and released by Candace Owens. And I just want to address it head on because, that was a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there. I first want to say the reason I didn't share that screen grab publicly is because it was a private exchange, and I felt like it didn't necessarily comport with things that were already public. I wanted to not betray my friend's trust in that way. But I did share it with some people in government because it happened really quick. It was, it took 33 hours for authorities to get their suspect. And in those first moments, we wanted no stone unturned. We wanted to leave nothing unturned. So I shared it with a few people. Don't know where it went from there, apparently. But here we are. So one of the reasons, Blake, that I'm glad to have this now public, it was not mine to share publicly, but one of the criticisms we've received is that we don't care, we're not investigating every lead, we're not looking under every stone, and that somehow we're just sweeping things under the rug. And when I say that we want justice for Charlie more than anybody else, I really mean it, and no stone unturned. I mean, I don't know if you want to chime in on that part alone, but I have more to say.
Yeah, so it has been so frustrating to have people blow up about this.
Yeah.
And I've certainly stated publicly, the reason I haven't weighed in on things is I am an eyewitness to events, and they've said, don't comment on things because anything you say can mess that up. I don't want to mess up any trial for the person who did.
They told you that Erica Kirk was continuing Charlie Kirk's legacy, and the truth is she's not. Right when Charlie started questioning a specific nation, they took him out. Almost like they just wiped it away, because he was getting too close to the truth. Erica Kirk, the grieving widow who never once smudged her dark eyeshadow, now says the show will go on, and she forgives him. She forgives the man who we know isn't even probably the guy. And guess what? Her father worked for Raytheon's Israeli division. This isn't Charlie's legacy. And here's what we're not supposed to talk about. There is no coroner's report, no church funeral, no burial site, no official autopsy, no ballistics report, and no death certificate. The entire crime scene was destroyed, evidence erased, a private jet radar off 12 minutes away, 20 minutes after Charlie was unalived, and the weapon was found on land owned by Palantir. Kash Patel fired multiple heads of the FBI in that region days before September 10th. But sure, Erica Kirk is so strong on podcasts, leaving her kids with a nanny after they watched their father's life be taken. And just 48 hours after Charlie's assassination, they marketed your grief for money and power. They turned this man's life being taken into a business and called it legacy.
If you consider yourself to be a Candace Owens fan, and you consider yourself to be a reasonable person, please listen. Candace Owens retweeted this pretty nefarious account that pointed out that Josh Hammer had retweeted an old tweet of Donald Trump the day before Charlie Kirk died, talking about public executions. And he said based. And they're trying to make it seem like that is evidence that he had something to do with what happened to Charlie Kirk. I want you to keep in mind that Josh Hammer is someone who's been debunking the Candace Owens narrative, because he got to see the Bibi Netanyahu letter at the time, like when he sent it out to Bibi, and Candace Owens was so triggered when Bibi Netanyahu mentioned it, and he just read a little bit of it and said some nice things about Charlie, and she was so triggered, and she alluded that he was misrepresenting it, but obviously the way that Candace represented it was wrong. Josh Hammer also spoke out against her narrative about Bill Ackman and other people threatening Charlie Kirk in the Hamptons. Seth Dillon, Turning Point USA staff members, other influencers who were there, and Josh Hammer, who was there, all said that that account that she was trying to push was inaccurate. And the text messages that Candace Owens leaked, because she's such a good friend with Charlie Kirk, saying he would abandon the Israel cause and was mad about Jewish donors taking away $2 million, that happened 48 hours before he passed. The day before he passed, he was on a Zoom call with Josh Hammer and other people from Turning Point, going over pro-Israel talking points, or talking points that he may encounter while he was on tour. So he hadn't, I guess, apparently abandoned the cause, and he tweeted what he tweeted, or sorry, not tweeted, messaged what he messaged in frustration. He's been a thorn in Candace Owens' side. Now, could there possibly be a reason why Josh Hammer retweeted this old post about Donald Trump saying something about public executions? Could there be a reason that he did that during that time, and not just because he was letting everyone know and doing a foreshadowing about what was going to happen to Charlie Kirk? Could there be a reason? Yes. This is the reason. This was the top story that people, especially on the right, were talking about nonstop. When people pushed back and said Josh Hammer was clearly talking about her, Candace Owens said, there's not a single shred of proof that you can produce, blah, 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 blah. She said there was no new information about her murder that day, so it wasn't even trending. Well, this is Charlie Kirk's feed. He was certainly talking about it a lot. But before the retweet here from Josh up there, oh, guess what? He also reposted this. He also reposted this. He also did an interview on Sky News. Here's Charlie Kirk again. Charlie Kirk again. And wow, Donald Trump spoke out about it. And that was September the 9th. And Charlie Kirk retweeted that. So could that be why Josh retweeted an old post of Donald Trump? Because people went on to write about how he demanded the death penalty. This is beyond asking questions. These are accusations. While a serious murder investigation is going on. And people from Turning Point USA are being harassed and threatened. And it seems like she wants to tear down that organization. And they're using their silence on different things as evidence that they're hiding something. But in real life, there's going to be a murder trial and there's investigations, and you can't talk about everything for clicks and views.
What is her goal here? To what? Taint the jury pool, public opinion, just to get cash from all of the views she's getting? Oh, she's just seeking the truth. This isn't the truth. Do you think what she's doing is responsible? Do you think what she's doing is Christian? Do you think bearing false witness is a cool thing to do, especially during a Jewish holiday when he's not checking his phone and could even speak up for himself? She's not being responsible with her platform, and even if she has some kind of secret information that could lead to something with investigation, she should report it to authorities, because she's not going to have the power to put someone behind bars anyway. But I think it's so interesting that she's so against the idea of this left-wing indoctrinated gay man dating a trans woman furry, that he's behind what happened to Charlie, someone who said that his content was hateful, that he's not responsible, and it's the Jews that she's been railing on for years. Isn't that so convenient for her narrative? She doesn't have evidence for that claim. She has feelings and apparently dreams. I know many of you really like Candace, but do you genuinely feel that she is responsibly using her platform?
Folks, we have a major problem on our hands. We now have a sitting Democratic senator standing in the well of the Senate right now, announcing to the American people that him, his investigators, and a bunch of other people apparently saw records that were part of the Epstein file from the Treasury Department over a year ago and buried them.
Last year, the Biden administration allowed our investigators to look at portions of the file. We did that at the Treasury building. Here is what it says. Treasury's Epstein file details, Mr. President, 4,725 wire transfers. Let me repeat that. 4,725 wire transfers, adding up to nearly $1.1 billion flowing in and out of just one of Mr. Epstein's bank accounts.
He then goes on to make the accusation that all 4,700 and some odd wire transfers should have been individuals that they investigated. And the problem is, as he said, their investigators saw those records a year ago. And Senator Wyden and whoever else saw those records sat on them and did nothing, which means the Biden administration had them also. So I have a couple questions, Senator Wyden. How long have you known about those 407 some odd thousand wire transfers? And what did your investigators do to try to find out who those people were, who the recipients were? And more importantly, why did you bury it, Senator Wyden? And another question, if the Treasury Department had access to those wire transfers, where did they get them? When did they get them? How long did the Biden administration have them? And why were they burying them and sitting on them? And here's another question. The Ghislaine Maxwell trial ended in 2021. Did they get those records through that trial? And if they did they present any of that information in the court case at all to try to get to the bottom of who those 4,700 and some odd thousand people were? Sorry, Senator Wyden, you don't suddenly get to pull these records out that you've been sitting on for a year and try to accuse anybody of anything in this administration when you've had those records for a year and did nothing.
It is wild to me that Candace Owens is trying to make people believe that people weren't tweeting about her on September the 9th. There's Charlie Kirk's tweet about her, by the way. All in order for her to justify putting a target on Josh Hammer's back because he retweeted an old tweet of Donald Trump calling for public executions, which he's done a few times, because she wanted to imply that he had some kind of foreknowledge or perhaps was involved in what happened to Charlie Kirk, his friend, claiming there was no new information about what happened to her, so it wasn't even trending, even though President Trump made a special announcement about it. Anyway, I'm here today to talk about these texts that Candace Owens leaked, because Josh Hammer was in this chat about Charlie Kirk being upset that he was going to lose a $2 million donor, and said this stuff about abandoning the Israel cause and bringing back Candace Owens and all this stuff. Josh Hammer released the rest of it. Remember when I told you guys that despite what Charlie Kirk said when he was upset after losing a $2 million donor, that he still went over talking points on how he could defend Israel on his college tour. Zoom meeting, 6 p.m. That was the Zoom meeting with Charlie and Josh and other people going over pro-Israel talking points. Charlie thanked them. He asked about the tour. He talked about him going to Utah Valley U, which is really just eerie looking back on all this, knowing what was soon to happen to Charlie. And someone made a joke about Antifa friends, and Charlie Kirk did the hands together meme. So he clearly didn't abandon Israel, but let's go ahead and read through Josh Hammer's post. I have been extremely reluctant to post screenshots from a murdered friend. It feels icky. I don't like it. But while I was offline this week for a holiday, a high-profile, deeply unwell lunatic used screenshots of an intimate group chat I was in with Charlie Kirk and some other to impugn my character in the worst way, to allege I somehow had foreknowledge or worse of my own friend's horrific assassination. In those screenshots from about 3:30 to 4 o'clock p.m., the day before he was killed, Charlie was blowing off steam in a private group chat setting. Donors have every right to withhold donations, and organization CEO/chairman have every right to then be upset when donors withhold those donations. That is just the nature of donors and donees in the not-for-profit space. As I previously explained, the notion that Charlie Kirk was turning on his career-long friendships with the Jewish people and the Jewish state of Israel, as opposed to sarcastically blowing off steam in a private group chat setting, is an egregious lie and is belied by the facts. 2 hours after Charlie blew off steam in the chat, I joined a Zoom call with him and a few others. The New York Post covered the Zoom call shortly after Charlie's death. In short, Charlie sought out our advice for how to better communicate the Israel issue on campus so as to be most effective with a younger Gen Z audience. Charlie was passionate about fighting the mind virus of conspiratorial Jew hatred, something he made clear over and over and over again. The final ever messages Charlie sent in the WhatsApp chat, which were delivered hours after the deeply out-of-context screenshots that the aforementioned lunatic and others have been discussing this week, make clear that Charlie was deeply grateful for our help. After our call, he felt more confident and reassured that he could make the case for the Jewish people and for Israel on college campuses. These are literally Charlie's final messages in that WhatsApp chat. Emotions can run high at times, but Charlie Kirk remained a true friend of the Jewish people and the Jewish state to the very end. I do want to correct something that I had been reporting. I had been saying that that text message that Candace leaked was from 48 hours before he died, because that's what Candace Owens was saying, that it was from 48 hours before he died. And according to Josh, it was the day before. Imagine if someone looked at your WhatsApp or text messages or something and just took a snippet of it, no context surrounding it, and fit it to their narrative and try to redefine you and convince everyone to ignore all the other evidence and all the other things that you publicly said. Do you think that's a fair way for her to represent Charlie Kirk? And do you think what she did to Josh Hammer was Christian in the least bit? So this is like the third time that Josh just totally blew up her narrative surrounding Charlie Kirk after he died.
So I've always wondered how Candace Owens gets away with saying the shit she says. And I might have just figured out how she is getting away with it. Now, before we dig in, this is all for entertainment purposes only. Gotta say that, but this is the reason why Candace gets away with everything she says. George Farmer, her husband. So here's what's just weird. So first off, they only knew each other for 18 days before he proposed. Strange. He also proposed via FaceTime. Very traditional. They were then married in 2019 in the Trump Winery. Oh, but there's more. If you didn't know, George Farmer, Candace's husband, actually is the one that created Parler. Yeah, remember that Republican conservative Parler platform? He also served briefly as the chairman for the British offshoot of Turning Point USA. It's like it was meant to be. Then I'm like, how rich is this guy? And where does he come from? Oh, none other than his father, Michael Farmer. The dude's a baron, a lord. The man founded the massive British trading metal and commodity company, along with being a founding partner of the Red Kite Group, a hedge fund specializing in metals. A lot of money in metals. As of 2022, now this is 3 years ago, he was worth around 160 million. Another interesting about Candace's father-in-law is he's a philanthropist and he's become a deputy chair of the Council of Christians and Jews. We all know her opinions on Israel. A little did I know, in 2024, Lord Farmer publicly distanced himself from his daughter-in-law, Candace Owens, over anti-Semitic comments. Little conflict of interest in the family. Don't they look so happy? So arranged. But I've got a feeling this is the reason why she can say the shit she says. Money, power, something's off here. Something is very off. It seems like an arrangement. An arrangement that really benefited Candace Owens. I always knew there was something more to her.
I really hope you enjoyed my video. And if you did, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you all on the flip side.